Tieu Nu's life is a profound reflection of the resilience, complexity, and vibrant spirit of rural women in Vietnam, especially those who navigate the demanding role of single motherhood amidst economic and social challenges. Her story, framed by daily hardships and tender moments, mirrors the broader context faced by countless women who balance the weight of responsibility with hope and strength. Each day in her life begins early, well before the sun rises over the misty mountains. The cool air mingles with the rising warmth of cooking fires as she prepares simple meals for her family. Attention to detail marks even the humblest tasks, from carefully pacing the fire to preserve embers, to selecting the freshest greens to balance nutrition, to coaxing a shy smile from her young son Duy. This attentive care embodies a mother's dedication, transforming scarcity into nourishment and love. Duy's laughter and curiosity infuse the home with vitality. His eager hands try to mimic his mother's movements, whether riding a small bike or helping with household chores. His innocence contrasts sharply with the harsh realities they face, making each joyful moment precious. Tieu Nu watches him with protective eyes, aware of dangers yet determined to shelter him in a cocoon of love and learning. Their home stands as a modest sanctuary, shaped by careful maintenance and the rhythms of rural life. It responds to the cycles of nature. Monsoon rains swell nearby streams, turning muddy roads slick and difficult to traverse. Dry seasons parch fields, demanding innovative ways to conserve water and sustain crops. Tieu Nu's adaptability emerges here. Her shift from traditional rice farming to cultivating medicinal herbs or selling small goods indicates resourcefulness sparked by necessity and hope. Economic survival requires constant negotiations with the environment and community. The market is a dynamic space where prices fluctuate and services or produce must compete or collaborate to sustain livelihoods. Selling crabs by weight, bargaining for good rates on firewood, or navigating the vagaries of seasonal demand all demand patience, savvy, and resilience. Village life pulses with interwoven social strands. Neighbors gather in shared spaces, exchanging support and navigating inevitable conflicts. Encounters between children over shared grazing lands or misunderstandings about chores and responsibilities reflect underlying tensions but also opportunities for learning cooperation. Elderly women and men act as mediators, guiding younger generations toward resolution, blending tradition with the practical necessities of today. Truong's role in Tieu Nu's life adds depth and texture. His gentle manner and attentive listening creates a safe haven where she can set down burdens momentarily. Conversations between them are reservoirs of empathy, offering understanding without judgment. His quiet encouragement empowers her to consider possibilities beyond mere survival, planting seeds for emotional and practical growth. The responsibilities weighing on her shoulders are numerous: managing finances strained by the need to invest in tools and maintain crops, planning for her son's education, and navigating the limited access to healthcare. Constraints imposed by geography magnify these challenges. Trips to town involve long journeys, often vulnerable to weather and health limitations. She confronts these obstacles with tenacity shaped by love and unwavering obligation. Physical labor forms the backbone of her daily routine. Long hours in fields under changing skies test strength and endurance. Yet beyond physical exertion lies the emotional labor, the mental calculations required to balance expenses, the constant vigilance for opportunities and threats, and the emotional resilience to stay motivated despite uncertainty and fatigue. This multi-dimensional effort reflects the breadth of what it means to be a rural single mother in Vietnam. Evenings soften the starkness of daytime struggle. Shared meals with family become rituals of connection and pause. The hum of children's voices, the sharing of stories, the quiet acts of care all weave a fabric of belonging and psychological nourishment. Visits from aunts, neighbors, and friends punctuate the rhythm, reinforcing communal bonds that underpin survival and joy alike. Tieu Nu's narrative embodies the intersection of tradition and modernity. While daily living adheres to cultural expectations and inherited knowledge, she is also part of broader social shifts. Increased access to information technology, community initiatives empowering women, and governmental programs supporting rural development frame new possibilities. Participation in women's unions and cooperatives offers avenues for training, financial support, and collective action. These resources, though not always easily accessible, represent vital tools in transformation. Her story also highlights the social and cultural forces shaping women's lives in rural Vietnam. Gender roles often add layers of burden, with women responsible not only for productive labor, but also for household management and child-rearing. Expectations for modesty, obedience, and sacrifice shape behaviors, but can also constrain aspirations. Yet examples like Tieu Nu illustrate how women negotiate and sometimes reshape these norms, asserting agency within and beyond traditional frameworks. Economic initiatives targeting rural women have demonstrated tangible impact. Programs such as Tieu Nu provide microloans, training in sustainable agriculture, and peer support networks. Women engage in diverse activities, from raising livestock, cultivating high-value crops, to launching small businesses. Tieu Nu's own efforts echo this trend of leveraging available resources and community ties to build a more resilient livelihood. Community health and education services contribute importantly. Access to pre- and postnatal care, school attendance for children, and health education improve quality of life and future opportunities. These services are often championed by women leaders within local unions who balance advocacy and practical support roles. The overlay of access and inequality remains a challenge, but also an impetus for continual progress. The psychological and emotional dimensions intertwine with material realities. Stress, anxiety, and social isolation commonly accompany poverty and single parenthood, demanding integrated approaches spanning mental health care, social inclusion, and economic empowerment. Tieu Nu's experiences align with findings that holistic support yields more sustainable outcomes for rural women and their families. Cultural heritage and communal rituals provide a source of strength and identity. Festivals, folk customs, and religious beliefs foster connection to history and shared values. These connections offer comfort and continuity, reinforcing resilience in the face of disruption. Tieu Nu's navigation of these cultural currents adds richness to her personal journey and connects individual resilience to collective memory. In essence, her life story highlights the layered complexity of rural Vietnamese women's experiences today, a mosaic of struggle and strength, tradition and change, challenge and hope. It calls for nuanced understanding of the interplay between gender, economy, culture, and social structures shaping everyday realities. Tieu Nu's journey is a vivid living testament to the power of human spirit sustained by love, community, and the relentless pursuit of a better life. Each step forward, each challenge met, and every moment of joy amid hardship forms a compelling narrative of resilience worthy of attention and respect. Her story invites reflection and action on the societal structures that support or hinder rural women, on the cultural norms influencing possibilities, and on the policies and programs that can amplify voices and opportunities. It challenges us to honor not only the struggles, but the triumphs, not only the hardships, but the hope at the heart of rural Vietnamese lives today. This extended narrative cherishes the full complexity of life, its pains and pleasures, duties and dreams, celebrating the unyielding courage of those like Tieu Nu who live each day with dignity, determination, and an open heart. The mountains, fields, and villages of Vietnam hold witness to countless such stories that weave together to shape the nation's future and the enduring light of humanity itself. The role of women in rural Vietnam, especially in the development and transformation of new rural areas in 2025, is both foundational and multifaceted. They are not merely participants, but key architects shaping their community's economic, social, cultural, and environmental futures. Beyond the traditional image of rural women confined to household chores and farming, contemporary Vietnamese women in villages increasingly emerge as dynamic forces of innovation, leadership, and resilience within their families and wider society. Women constitute a significant proportion of the rural labor force, often engaged simultaneously in agricultural production and domestic responsibilities. They are the backbone of farming activities, from land preparation and planting to harvesting and post-harvest processing. Their knowledge of crop cycles, soil management, seed selection, and livestock care is invaluable, handed down through generations, yet continuously evolving with scientific advances. This labor sustains food security not only for households, but for national needs. The construction of infrastructure vital to rural livelihoods, roads, irrigation systems, sanitation facilities, schools, health clinics, owes much to women's direct contributions. Women willingly participate in collective efforts, volunteering labor and resources for community betterment. Their involvement in such civic projects strengthens social cohesion and ensures that infrastructure development aligns with families' practical needs. Participation in environmental sanitation and clean water initiatives reflects women's role as custodians of family health and local ecosystems. Vietnam's Women's Union acts as a critical platform for mobilizing women in rural areas. Through local branches, it organizes programs on vocational training, entrepreneurship, health education, and legal rights. Programs encouraging women-led micro-enterprises foster economic empowerment, reduce poverty, and enhance household resilience. Women engaged in these initiatives gain skills, financial independence, and social networks that extend their influence beyond traditional spheres. Cultural preservation remains a vital responsibility of rural women. They organize and perpetuate festivals, rituals, and folk arts that bind communities and transmit identity. These cultural activities often intertwine with income generation opportunities, such as handicrafts or local tourism promotion. Women's leadership in maintaining cultural heritage sustains the social fabric and nurtures a shared sense of belonging. Vietnam's Women's Union acts as a critical platform for mobilizing women in rural areas. Through local branches, it organizes programs on vocational training, entrepreneurship, health education, and legal rights. Programs encouraging women-led micro-enterprises foster economic empowerment, reduce poverty, and enhance household resilience. Women engaged in these initiatives gain skills, financial independence, and social networks that extend their influence beyond traditional spheres. Cultural preservation remains a vital responsibility of rural women. They organize and perpetuate festivals, rituals, and folk arts that bind communities and transmit identity. These cultural activities often intertwine with income generation opportunities, such as handicrafts or local tourism promotion. Women's leadership in maintaining cultural heritage sustains the social fabric and nurtures a shared sense of belonging. Educational attainment among women in rural regions is gradually improving. Increased access to schools and targeted scholarships enable more girls to complete primary and secondary education. Education empowers women to participate more fully in family decision-making and community leadership. It also influences attitudes toward health, nutrition, and gender equality, shaping a progressive foundation for future generations. However, challenges persist. Secure land tenure remains unevenly distributed, often limiting women's ability to leverage land for economic development. Patriarchal norms and gender stereotypes sometimes restrict women's community voice and leadership opportunities. Access to health care, particularly for reproductive and mental health, is still inadequate in many rural locales. Social stigma around issues like domestic violence and poverty may hinder women from seeking needed support. Governmental and non-governmental interventions target these obstacles. Village-level councils and women's unions increasingly incorporate gender perspectives in planning and monitoring. Programs addressing domestic violence, providing microcredit, and facilitating digital literacy reflect a holistic approach to empowerment. Climate resilience projects involve women as leaders in adapting agricultural practices and managing natural resources sustainably. Economic diversification is a growing trend among rural women. Beyond staple crop production, many engage in high-value crops, animal husbandry, aquaculture, and small-scale trade or services. Digital platforms open new marketing channels, allowing women entrepreneurs to reach wider audiences. Cooperative models enhance bargaining power and resource sharing. These economic evolutions contribute to poverty reduction and improve family well-being. Social welfare programs provide essential safety nets. Initiatives addressing single mothers, elderly women, ethnic minorities, and disabled persons incorporate multidimensional aid, financial support, healthcare, education, and legal assistance. Psychological counseling and community support groups address mental health needs, nurturing holistic recovery and integration. Women's political participation is strengthening, with increased representation in commune and district councils. Their growing role in governance ensures that rural development policies are more attuned to gender-specific needs and potentials. Advocacy for legal reforms and social justice remains vibrant, fostering progressive social change. Environmental stewardship highlights women's critical role in sustainable rural futures. They lead community efforts in waste management, reforestation, water conservation, and biodiversity protection. Traditional ecological knowledge, merged with modern practices, underpins their stewardship effectiveness. Tieu Nu's personal journey embodies this complicated, richly textured reality. Her life illustrates the intertwined nature of economic labor, social support, cultural heritage, and personal strength. Her story highlights the importance of institutional frameworks that nurture women's roles and increase access to resources, education, and justice. Historical continuities blend with dynamic change as rural Vietnamese women assert more control over livelihoods and futures. Their stories reflect thousands of villages adapting to market economies, climate challenges, and social transformations. Understanding their multiple roles challenges simplistic narratives of rural poverty and illuminates complex networks of resilience and creativity. In conclusion, rural women in Vietnam in 2025 are central actors in the nation's ongoing rural transformation. Their contributions span agriculture, household management, cultural preservation, environmental care, economic innovation, and political leadership. Empowering them through inclusive policies, education, healthcare, and social protections is essential not only for gender equity, but for sustainable national development. Tieu Nu's story is a microcosm of these broader trends, a powerful narrative of endurance and hope that testifies to the indomitable spirit of rural Vietnamese women. It calls for continued attention, respect, and support to harness their full potential and secure vibrant, equitable futures for their families and communities. The year 2025 marks a significant chapter in the evolving role of women in rural Vietnam, particularly in the expansive efforts of the National New Rural Development Program. Women have transcended traditional confines to become pivotal contributors and leaders in rebuilding and transforming rural landscapes. Their dynamic participation touches every sector, from infrastructure and agriculture to social welfare, cultural preservation, and political engagement, making them indispensable architects of new rural futures. Women's contributions begin with active labor and property contributions. Millions have willingly donated land and labor toward the construction of vital infrastructure such as rural roads, irrigation systems, schools, health clinics, and cultural centers. This foundational work reshapes village life, improving connectivity, public health, and access to education, thereby enhancing overall quality of life. Their involvement in sanitation campaigns and environmental protection ensures that rural communities progress in sustainable and health-conscious ways. The Vietnam Women's Union acts as a vital mobilizing force. Their role is broadly multifaceted, encompassing advocacy, skill development, economic empowerment, and social protection. Through targeted campaigns such as Building Families with 5 No's and 3 Cleans, millions of women have been engaged in efforts to eliminate poverty, prevent domestic violence, reduce environmental pollution, and foster clean and healthy household practices. Such programs have concrete outcomes, with millions of households benefiting from improved sanitary toilets, clean water use, and participation in health awareness initiatives. Economic empowerment is a cornerstone of women's expanding role. Recognizing that poverty reduction is inseparable from women's economic status, the union and government initiatives promote entrepreneurship, vocational training, and access to microcredit. Thousands of women have established micro and small enterprises, ranging from processing agricultural products to handicraft production and small-scale retail. These ventures not only augment family incomes, but also provide women with financial autonomy and decision-making power. Women's leadership extends beyond economic spheres into cultural and social domains. They organize and lead local cultural festivals, safeguard folk traditions, and nurture intergenerational transmissions of cultural heritage. Such activities simultaneously cultivate community identity and contribute to income generation, particularly through cultural tourism and artisan crafts. The evolving political role of women is essential in ensuring that rural development is inclusive and gender-sensitive. Increased representation of women in commune councils and local governance structures enables advocacy for women's rights, children's welfare, and equitable resource allocation. Women also actively participate in policy monitoring and social auditing processes, providing grassroots feedback to improve program effectiveness. Environmental stewardship is another critical arena where women excel. They spearhead community-based natural resource management, including waste collection and recycling, water resource protection, and reforestation efforts. Their intrinsic knowledge of local ecosystems, combined with modern techniques, enables sustainable management practices that bolster community resilience to climate variability and environmental degradation. Despite these dynamic contributions, rural women continue to face significant barriers. Land tenure insecurity remains pervasive, often due to legal and customary limitations that restrict women's rights over property. Gender norms and stereotypes persist, sometimes limiting women's mobility and leadership roles. Healthcare access, particularly for reproductive and mental health, remains uneven, emphasizing the need for enhanced infrastructure and specialized services in rural regions. The intersection of multiple vulnerabilities, including ethnic minority status, age, disability, and economic hardship, complicates the ability of many women to fully leverage development opportunities. Programs that target these groups and foster inclusive development are increasingly prioritized, recognizing that leaving no one behind is essential for holistic rural progress. Information technology and digital literacy have become catalysts for women's empowerment. Increasing smartphone penetration and internet access enable rural women to connect to markets, access education, and participate in social networks that transcend geographic limitations. E-commerce platforms and online marketplaces open new sales channels, expanding the reach of rural women's products and services. Social media facilitates mobilization, advocacy, and peer learning, enhancing social capital and solidarity. Education remains fundamental to empowerment trajectories. Efforts to reduce gender disparities in school enrollment and completion among rural girls have yielded improvements, supported by scholarship programs, community sensitization, and infrastructural investments. Educated women not only contribute actively to the rural economy, but also enrich social and civic life, fostering progressive values and participatory governance. Social welfare enhanced by government and NGO initiatives provide critical lifelines. Programs offering financial assistance, legal aid, counseling, and skill training enable women, particularly those vulnerable or marginalized, to rebuild lives with dignity and security. These are crucial in breaking cycles of poverty and violence. The narrative of rural Vietnamese women in 2025 is one of remarkable balance between tradition and transformation, labor and leadership, vulnerability and strength. Their stories articulate the complex, layered realities of rural life, enriched by the fierce determination to chart better futures for families and communities. Tieu Nu's individual experience weaves through this tapestry. Her actions, managing household economies, pursuing education for her son, engaging with community health and development efforts, and building connections with supportive networks, illustrate the daily enactment of this broader socio-economic transformation. Her story highlights the intersections of personal resilience and systemic support necessary to achieve sustainable development outcomes. Recognition of women's roles is integral to policy formulation and resource allocation. Vietnam's national strategies explicitly incorporate gender equality goals aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to enhance women's economic participation, political representation, education level, and health status. Success stories proliferate, showcasing vibrant rural female entrepreneurs, community leaders, and change agents whose efforts propel villages toward prosperity and social cohesion. Future challenges include continuing reduction of gender-based disparities, enhancement of social protection systems, adaptation to climate change impacts, and fostering inclusive participation in digital economies. Strategic interventions that deepen community mobilization, strengthen institutional capacity, and elevate women's voices in decision-making remain priorities. The holistic empowerment of rural women is both a catalyst and consequence of Vietnam's rural renaissance. Their dynamic contributions touch every facet of life, creating ripple effects that elevate families, enrich communities, and energize the nation's progress. Appreciating this multifaceted role inspires more equitable partnerships, investments, and recognition of women as essential architects of Vietnam's social and economic future.